Thanks for tuning in, and welcome to the Harness Racing Alumni Show. I'm Freddie Hudson, and I'm here with Trade Martin and Bob Marks.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show with your hosts, Freddie Hudson and Trade Martin.
This week's Alumni Show is brought to you by Bill Houghton, insuring standardbreds and farms for over 40 years. 954-655-5547. That's the number you call for all equine insurance. Bill knows the ins and outs of equine insurance. With this year's new increased online bidding and new protocols in place, make sure your equine investments are protected. Call or text Bill at 954-655-5547. That's 954-655-5547. Call Bill now. This week's returning guest is Standardbred trainer Greg Peck, who also has a strategic communications background advising groups such as Pharmaceutical Researchers and Manufacturers Association, American Petroleum Institute, American Chemistry Council, and the American Society of Association Executives. Greg, welcome.
Thanks for having me again, guys.
Greg, what are your thoughts on the current situation regarding the United States Trotting Association supporting the lawsuit to stop HISA legislation?
Well, I am not an expert on the specific legislation. I will say this. Hopefully, when the dust settles, whatever happens, we'll have something in place that is in the best interest in the health and welfare of the horses, as well as a fair, honest, and hopefully appealing product to customers, especially new ones, because we're not getting them. But we really need something in place that says, okay, we have a good sport, it's a productive sport, as I said, it's fair and honest, and it's safe, and your dollar is in good hands if you bet it with us, and we moved towards sustainability, if that is ever possible. But, that's what I'd like to see happen. As far as the legislation itself, well, and the lawsuit, you read what I do. It's gone from, it looked like Joe and Russell were against it, but then when you see, well, the question was, well, would you support the lawsuit, whether there's funding or maybe not funding? There are upwards of 40 directors voting yes. So, I really can't comment on their behalf. But, put it this way, whatever they do again, I saw an interesting quote somewhere the other day, and let's say this in balance, going back to what I said about doing the best interest of the horse as well. The horses, they need some medication. We live in a new time, and the drivers or the riders, they do need whips. And that being said, we saw the indictments. They say there should be more. So they are looking at the drug situations and the violations, and I see whipping rules in every state, in every province. So that's moving forward as well.
We have to catch up with the rest of the world. The rest of the world has better policies and stuff in place, and we do have to get them.
Well, I don't know what the precedent would be, Fred, because I was thinking about this, about the legislation. That if you look at where it all kind of originated, certainly when you think of Ben Johnson back in the days of the Worlds of the Olympics, with the steroids, and then you had the baseball players, et cetera. Then you had Lance Armstrong. And would we be the first if we did have a federal legislation in place, enacted and working? Would we be the first? Or, because I know they talk about the anti-doping agencies and that for the human sports, but it hasn't really happened. Is there legislation for them?
Well, the Olympics are under USTA at this point. And you have the World Anti-Doping Agency also that's overseeing a lot of sports. And you have, like on baseball, a good example, that one baseball player, he got caught using Lasix, and he got a 180-day game suspension.
Mm-hmm. But again, he's suspended by baseball. It's not a federal enactment.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So that's, again, in fairness to all concerned, it would take careful consideration, and we have good people in place. You have the John Campbells of the world with 5 decades of passion for the industry. You have, say what you want, whether you agree or disagree. You have everybody from Joe and Russell to Jeff Garrell, et cetera. It seems that all parties are talking about it. But again, I guess it requires further discussion. But I'd really like to focus on getting more people to come see us and bet on us, because they, just coming to see us doesn't do the trick. They got to bet on us as well.
Well, let's change the topic here a little bit. Yeah. The Ontario horsemen, they're leaving Canada in droves, and they're coming to the U.S. to race because of COVID-19. What are your thoughts on that, Greg?
It's an interesting one. It's a personal choice, obviously. If you choose to stay in Ontario or leave Ontario, there's obviously a situation. Being a Canadian, I'm kind of surprised that they're behind us, and I'm not here to debate that either, because I'm not an expert on that. I will say this: the consideration to me, the real issue is this. Think about it. Okay, they're very funded by the province of Ontario, to the point that even if they don't race, they'll give like $1,000 a horse that isn't raced to keep an economy going. And let's say this happens 6 weeks, 2 months. If you leave the U.S., Canada, go to the U.S., think of what you're taking out of the economy. That is the reason that you pretty well are in existence at the level you're at in the first place. Because, what does that say to the province? Like, I'm sure that Doug Ford, the Premier, did not look and say, well, you can't just have harness racing. No, they obviously fall under a set of criteria that they think it's in the best interest of the province that they don't have racing, even though I read where they've had no cases in that. I watch everything that Jim Lawson says, and he does an excellent job. He really communicates with passion. There's no doubt about it. I wish I could say I trained him. He's so good. He's trying. You see Jessica Buxley, Billy McClenchie, they're trying to keep the racing going. They're sending the messages out to the province. But again, at this time, obviously they think that they can't. So I think they really should think, well, should we leave? Because, again, that economy leaves Ontario, which funds you. And it's not, in other words, if it's gone for a month, 2 months, a year, well, that's not something that they get back at that particular time, that they say that if they're so crucial to the Ontario economy, I just don't know that they can leave, as painful as it may seem. Think about it.
Got you on that one.
But again, that's up to an individual. And my sense of it is this: a lot of those horses that will leave, the determination types, a lot of them would be stakes horses anyway, and they'd have to pretty well come for sure anyway. They have top horses. So as far as the others, I don't know, what their motivations are. I'm just saying it would really be something to consider. What are you saying to the province? Because it's not all the other industries, for instance, that aren't as publicly funded as they are. I'll bet you they can't say, well, we're going to leave and come back when it's over.
No. But also, the Meadowlands now has a task force, and they're asking patrons their views on issues such as drivers giving holes, drivers talking on the track, the driving in half out. What's your viewpoint on that?
Well, I think what Jason did is made that announcement and, gave it food for thought. And, as I've said to him, and I've always said, Jason and Jeff Garrell have the best product. So I hope they don't change it too much, but I guess it's not a bad idea to see what the others are thinking out there. It's to get a sense of what that is, So, but I haven't seen anything on it, as of yet as to what has come out of it. I guess a few things on the three things that they talked about. The talking on the track, yeah, they shouldn't do that because it's a perception. Funny, I've been watching a lot about John McEnroe lately, and say what you want about it, but John McEnroe did for tennis. He kind of came along when everybody, was sorry. It was a very polite sport that I know I played, I instructed, and he made it a passionate dog-eat-dog type of sport that probably did a lot for it. He kind of came along when Bjorn Borg was no emotion, the tennis machine. So, maybe if they had the drivers not talking, and I even see them sending out, some tweets saying, funny things about the drivers to make it, that it is competitive. And I can tell you when they are out there. I watched the race last night from Yonkers. and I saw Yannick from the 8-hole, and boy, I'll tell you what, that was something to see, to watch Yannick. Well, Yannick Gingras, I've always said that. Talk about a strong driver. That was what you'd call a competition right out of the 8-hole. There was certainly no favors there. So, on that front, if they think the talking to make it more clear. As far as the giving holes, it's kind of like taking away artistic freedom, because I think for the most part, the holes are given to, promote your chances of winning the race. And I've said this to Bob in the past about whether you're the novice handicap or the one that's gone for years. The reason that they have a 10-horse gate in a mile track is to give the outside a chance. And maybe if you made it that, okay, it's dog eat dog, so the 10-horse who's heavy favorite leads and gets parked for his lungs and finishes very tired, I don't know how good that would look to the public. I don't know if anybody thought about that. Would that possibly, the more tired, exhausted horses you have, because remember, they go fast enough now. We can say that. I'll say this. They go faster all the time, every time, and there's less whipping than there was years ago. So let's say if you want them to race even harder, it might be tougher on the horses. And then at that point, well, then we got another problem, because we've been so fortunate that the whole breakdown issue is almost not an issue with us. But if we had really tired horses, and that's purely speculation, it's something to think about if you made it even more tough on the horses, because that's what it would do. So I think that's another one we'd really have to think about. I've even said this. I think all tracks should have passing lanes. You say, what? Yeah, and I've talked to Jeff years ago about it. Here's what I do think. Even if you had it, I've suggested Mohawk, like the recall, Fair Step Road is about 200 feet. Even if you had it there, just something that when the horses cross the finish line, you don't have as many held back. Because I was driving along, I see two construction workers over there, and I'll bet you if you went over there and you said to them, have you been to the harness racing? Yeah. What do you know about it? Well, they hold them back and they box them in. That was the stigma against us for years, why we started the passing lane. Let's not have that anymore. So if you had just a short one even, some people would say, well, the drivers would think it's not enough time to get to the wire in time, so they wouldn't use it at least, but it would be a public perception thing. I know all about middle half action, but again, I'm just thinking for the eye and the betterment of the public, it's something to be thought about. It really is.
Okay. Hey, the last time when you were on our show, you had mentioned something about the Amish coming into the sport and that the Amish community was growing. Anything more to add to that?
Yeah, a friend and agent gentleman, Dean Miller from Ohio, told me, I think down the road there's going to be like 1 million Amish families, and they're participating at all levels now. For instance, he has sold Phaetosive, Chardonnay, Plunge Blue Chip. I could go on for a while now. They're buying new farms. It's really, really something. And even you see horses that go to stud now. There were days, when those horses wouldn't otherwise go to stud. And I think that what the Amish community done has promoted that. I know the USTA, by the way, is even looking at a way to get more of them as members, because you have certain it depends on their community with regard to the religious views and the laws sort of the bishop, that a lot of them can't be licensed, and that would be a good thing if you could license. Think of how many of them that do have horses. That would be a good thing as well, and might even grow the business more.
Okay. Hey, I'm going to start preparing to close the show out a little bit.
Yeah.
But I noticed that you have a couple of horses in the race. So what's going on there? What's your plans? Are your stable growing again?
Well, I think I'm going to ramp up again. I talked about before John Weissman and his wife Liana, who has a great business called Exodus Breeders, talk about breeding. And anybody who has product for breeding buys it from Liana Weissman, and Colby and Christopher, the sons, and they've come along and kind of like their horse, their stallion Help is on the way. I feel that about them, and I hope they feel that about me, that we can get together, and do something special. I'd really like, because I never really was given horses in form. Bob will tell you that. I'd love to If somebody, I would like to get a few stakes horses, from somebody who might say, well, he does have some managerial skills, and he's had some top ones, not just the one, I won't even mention his name, we'll just refer to him as MH today, because they say you talk about him too much, so I won't. There, we're looking at maybe having a private training center somewhere near, Pennsylvania, because, I'm still big on Pennsylvania. I have confidence in Mike Harant and, Sam Beagle and company. They've done a good job there. They try their very best. I like racing there. We have like a home track at Harris Philly, which is, right on the water there. It's a shame people didn't see it. They think Liberty Bell is pretty. Liberty Bell was gone before I got here, but it's really pretty down there. So, I see a future. It's going to be challenging. I think we have to communicate in a certain manner, and maybe we can continue to do that, but maybe focus more on the good points, not on the bad points. The problem, what we'll call the drugs and the whips, we complain about not getting any national media. Well, that'll get it for us, and we don't want that. So I think as for now, I would rather if we could say, okay, if you look at other businesses, you mentioned earlier the American Petroleum Institute, the American Chemistry Council, or the one I'm most proud of, the American Society of Association Executives, because they represent basically all trade associations on K Street in Washington. They're the Association of Associations. They have people that look after laws and legislation, and they let, for instance, at our concern, therefore the horsemen and track management could focus on the product and get people to come and give us a try and keep coming. We need more people, and that's the bottom line. We need to move towards self-sustainability. That's what has to happen, and that's where I'd like to stay involved, and I'm confident that, I could do well at it again. I kind of haven't done it at a full-time level in years, but I'm ready to go again, and let's hope that we come up. I hope what they say, guys who do it again, and that would be me. With the one we won't even mention, we'll just say MH.
Okay. All right, Greg, I got to close the show out. We're about out of time here. Thank you so much for being on our show. If you're buying or selling your home, Joe Rico is your go-to guy. Joe has been representing buyers and sellers on Long Island for 30 years. He is an expert in all types of sales. Don't settle for average. Call or text Joe Rico today at 516-524-4870. That's Joe Rico at 516-524-4870. That's a wrap for this week's show, and don't forget to tune in next week.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show